Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're delving into a case so chilling it feels like something out of a horror movie. But this isn't fiction. It's the terrifying, true story of John Sweeney, better known as the Canal Killer. Behind the calm facade of a skilled carpenter lay a man whose deep-seated hatred and violent impulses led him down a path of destruction, leaving a trail of heartbreak and horror. Buckle up, because this is one story you won't forget. If you're new here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. And if you're ready to dive into this bone-chilling tale, let's get started. It was the spring of 1990. Melissa Halstead, a vibrant and talented American model turned photographer, was building a new chapter of her life in Amsterdam. Known for her infectious laugh and artistic eye, she was a woman full of ambition and promise. But as the tulips bloomed and the canals shimmered under the Dutch sun, Melissa vanished without a trace. The question that haunted her family and friends: where had she gone? For months, her family back in America held on to hope, making frantic calls and working tirelessly to uncover any lead. They feared the worst but prayed for her safety. Little did they know, their worst nightmare had already become reality. Years later, her remains were discovered in the murky waters of Rotterdam's canals, dismembered, unrecognizable, and horrifyingly abandoned. The investigation into Melissa's death led to a chilling discovery. Her last known relationship had been with John Sweeney, a charming but volatile carpenter with a dark side. To the outside world, he seemed ordinary, even kind. But behind closed doors, his temper was unpredictable, and his jealousy often boiled into violence. What was it about Melissa that drew Sweeney to her? Was it love? Obsession, or something far more sinister? And what caused their relationship to spiral into such unthinkable violence? Investigators would uncover a trail of disturbing evidence, connecting Melissa's tragic fate to a larger pattern of calculated brutality. What transforms love into rage? What drives a person to inflict such cruelty on someone they once claimed to cherish? These are the questions that haunted investigators, and they will haunt you too, as we unravel the terrifying truth of John Sweeney, the Canal Killer. Fast forward to February 2001. A chilling decade had passed since Melissa Halstead's brutal death, but John Sweeney's reign of terror was far from over. This time, the horror surfaced in Regent's Canal, London. The discovery of dismembered human remains sent shockwaves through the city. Investigators quickly confirmed that the body belonged to Paula Fields, a 31-year-old mother of 3. The gruesome detail: vital parts of her body, including her head, were missing. Just as they were in Melissa's case. Paula Fields was no stranger to hardship. Battling addiction and struggling to provide for her 3 children, she was a vulnerable woman trying to survive in a chaotic world. But even in her darkest moments, she couldn't have foreseen the nightmare she was about to encounter. Meeting John Sweeney sealed her fate, a fate that was as brutal as it was horrifying. The similarities between Paula's murder and Melissa's were undeniable. The dismembered body, the missing head, and the chilling precision of the cuts. Investigators realized they were dealing with a killer who had honed his methods. Someone meticulous, calculating, and utterly remorseless. And yet, for years, Sweeney had managed to evade justice, hiding in plain sight. Paula's murder sent chills through even the most seasoned investigators. How could someone capable of such horrific violence continue to go unnoticed? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, how many more victims lay hidden, their stories untold? beneath the waters of these canals. John Sweeney's path of destruction didn't begin or end with the murders of Melissa Halstead and Paula Fields. Long before their tragic ends, there were alarming signs of his unrelenting violence and control. One of the most terrifying examples was his brutal assault on Delia Balmer, a former girlfriend who narrowly escaped his murderous clutches. This was not the calculated killing of a stranger. This was rage unleashed on someone he once claimed to love. Delia Balmer was an independent and resilient woman who met John Sweeney in what she believed to be a moment of serendipity. But the charm he initially exuded quickly gave way to a darker side. Sweeney's controlling behavior escalated into obsessive jealousy and eventually unimaginable violence. In one horrifying incident, he attacked Delia with an axe, leaving her clinging to life and forever scarred, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Remarkably, Delia survived. Her escape was nothing short of miraculous, but the trauma of the attack lingered. In court, she gave a damning testimony that painted a vivid and horrifying picture of John Sweeney, a man consumed by rage, driven by jealousy, and utterly devoid of empathy. Her story provided investigators with a window into the mind of a man who had been spiraling out of control for years. But, despite Delia's bravery, the justice system failed to keep Sweeney contained. He vanished after the attack, slipping through the cracks and evading authorities for years. How many lives might have been saved if he had been stopped then? The weight of that question remains heavy to this day. If Delia hadn't escaped, would Sweeney's crimes have continued unchecked? And how many other victims might have fallen prey to his violent, insatiable rage? John Sweeney's violence wasn't confined to the physical world. It bled into his art, paintings and poems that were as grotesque as his crimes. These disturbing creations served as windows into a mind consumed by hatred, rage, and an obsession with control. From chilling depictions of mutilated women to verses that seemed to taunt investigators, Sweeney used his art to express the depths of his twisted psyche. Of Sweeney's most disturbing works was a scratch card poem titled The Scalp Hunter. In it, he described his relationship with Melissa Halstead in chilling detail, painting her as both a victim and a villain in his narrative. The words reeked of contempt, reflecting his deep-seated hatred for the women who crossed his path. These weren't just artistic expressions, they were confessions, veiled in metaphors and ink. For investigators, Sweeney's art posed as many questions as it did answers. Were these paintings and poems a twisted confession of his past crimes, or were they glimpses into fantasies he had yet to act on? Each piece seemed to contain hidden messages, macabre puzzles waiting to be solved. One painting depicted a woman's lifeless body, eerily resembling the way Paula Fields' remains were found. Another showed fragmented faces, hinting at dismemberment. The chilling parallels were impossible to ignore. But Sweeney's art wasn't limited to paintings. His poetry was just as disturbing, often referring to his victims in dehumanizing terms. He described their suffering with a detached cruelty, as if reliving his crimes brought him some twisted sense of satisfaction. One line stood out to investigators. Her screams echoed, but I was silent. Forensic psychologists who analyzed his works concluded that Sweeney saw himself as an artist of destruction and someone who derived power from creating and erasing life in equal measure. This was more than art. It was a record of his crimes, a way of immortalizing his violence. But it was also a game. Sweeney seemed to revel in leaving behind these taunting pieces, daring the world to understand the depths of his darkness. Investigators were left wondering, could these grotesque creations hold clues to more victims? Were there stories yet untold, hidden in his twisted imagery and cryptic verses? Were these works the ramblings of a man spiraling into madness, or carefully crafted trophies of his crimes? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, how many untold stories lay hidden within the brushstrokes and verses of John Sweeney's twisted creations? In April 2011, after decades of evading justice, John Sweeney was finally brought to trial at the Old Bailey in London, one of the most famous courts in the world. For the families of Melissa Halstead, Paula Fields, and possibly countless others, this moment marked the culmination of years of grief, unanswered questions, and a desperate search for closure. But even in the face of overwhelming evidence, Sweeney remained defiant, refusing to appear in court and showing not a shred of remorse for his unspeakable crimes. The trial painted a chilling portrait of John Sweeney. Prosecutors detailed his calculated murders, his ability to charm and manipulate, and the gruesome precision with which he dismembered his victims. They called him a man of extreme violence, someone who harbored a pathological hatred for women. Evidence presented included his disturbing artwork and poetry, which revealed not just his crimes, but also the dark, twisted motivations behind them. After days of harrowing testimony, the judge's words resonated through the courtroom. "You are a ruthless killer who poses an ongoing threat to women. Your crimes are so heinous that you will never be released." Sweeney was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a punishment rarely handed down in the UK. But even as justice was served, the shadows of his past crimes continued to loom large. Detectives took the opportunity to appeal for information about other potential victims, convinced that Sweeney's crimes extended far beyond the confirmed murders of Melissa Halstead and Paula Fields. The similarities in his methods, his transient lifestyle, and his dark, obsessive tendencies suggested that there could be more lives stolen by his hand, victims whose families may never receive answers. For the families of Melissa and Paula, the sentencing brought some measure of closure, but it could never erase the pain or restore the lives that were lost. For the detectives, it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, a race to uncover the full extent of Sweeney's reign of terror. And for the public, it left haunting questions. How many lives did he truly take? Could there still be victims waiting to be found? And what drives a man like John Sweeney to such monstrous lengths? John Sweeney is behind bars, but are there stories still untold? Could the darkness he left behind ever truly be unraveled? And, perhaps most chilling of all, how many killers like him remain hidden in plain sight? John Sweeney's story is more than just the tale of a ruthless killer. It's a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most ordinary of facades. A carpenter, a boyfriend, a man with hobbies and talents, yet beneath it all, he was a predator. His victims, Melissa Halstead and Paula Fields, were vibrant women who deserved so much more than the brutal fates they met. Their lives, their dreams, and their stories were violently cut short, leaving behind a void that no sentence could ever fill. Sweeney's crimes leave us with more questions than answers. How many more victims could there be? How did he manage to elude justice for so long? And most importantly, what can be done to prevent such horrors in the future? Sharing these stories doesn't just shed light on the crimes, it ensures that the voices of the victims are never silenced. Their lives mattered, and their stories deserve to be remembered. Cases like this remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance, awareness, and justice. What are your thoughts on John Sweeney's story? Could there be more victims still waiting to be discovered, and could their families finally find closure? Share your theories in the comments below. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new true crime investigation. Together, we can keep these stories alive and demand justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. And remember, if you have any information about unresolved cases, no matter how small it may seem, reach out to your local authorities. Your voice could make a difference. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community dedicated to uncovering the truth and honoring the lives of those taken too soon. Until next time, stay safe and take care of one another.